Welcome to the XML programming tutorial. My name is Satyajit Padhi, taking you right to a particular section of XML. Now, what is an XML? As you guys all know, XML stands for Extended Markup Language. So, it is different from HTML for sure, because HTML is mainly used for displaying a data, how a data looks like, but XML is mainly used for transporting and computing a data inside a database or inside anything. So I'm going to cover in this section about XML elements and XML attributes. Okay, so what is an XML element? An XML element is everything from the element's start tag to the element's end tag. So as you all know, we do use many types of tags here in XML and HTML and all the web programming languages. So an element is the whole section of right beginning from the from the start tag to the end tag. So element can contain other elements like child elements and subchild elements. It can even contain text. It can contain attributes or a mix of all this above. Okay, I'll take you to a small example which can actually help you to know about how to declare an element, and how to declare sub elements and text sections, and something like attributes, everything. Okay, so to declare an element, we start the basic syntax is something like this. We start with a with a symbol like this. We can actually create any number of user-defined tags in XML. That is again an advantage here. Any number of user-defined tags can be defined here in an XML document. So suppose I'm trying to actually create a document and create an element named as bookstore. It's all about a bookstore. So the parent element, the first element in an XML document, is the root element. So the root element is like bookstore in my XML document. So it can have many, so this is like an element. This is how element is declared as a front tag. There is even an end tag for sure. Every front tag should have, every beginning tag should have an end tag in XML document. That is compulsory. Okay, let me tell you how do we declare a child element. Now suppose a bookstore has as a book, a book title. So there is a book title here, and suppose the name of the book is Harry Potter. Okay, so and I close the element, because that's where the element closes. So this whole thing, book title is actually a child element of the bookstore root element. So a book title tag is there, as you can see in the highlighted portion. There is a text section what I've entered named as Harry Potter that will get actually displayed in the web page. And I have the ending tag for the book title starting tag, and this is actually what you call as an element. Okay, this is the element section. Okay, now inside book title, I can actually give it something like any sort of sections. This is actually a text section what you're actually getting carried on. Okay, now suppose before bookstore, it might be having a child element named as book. Okay, and I actually try to give some extra information about this book tag. Okay, so what I can do is I can actually insert an attribute that actually defines some extra information or some particular information about that very tag itself, and I define an attribute through the help of a category tag. And what it does is it actually allows you to define name of an attribute that actually defines the information about that tag. So suppose I declare attribute named as children. Okay, and then I stop it. Now this is where the bookstore is the root element, this is the child element, and these are the subchild elements which actually carries on the text section. So this is the hierarchy, as you can see. And after this you can actually close all the tags that were open. Like the book tag should be closed first because that was second in the hierarchy, and then we should close the bookstore tag. Okay, so as you can see here, we have actually said you to how to declare an element, how do we declare sub elements, and how do we declare attributes that actually give some extra information about a particular element. Then we have the text section which actually displays the information about a particular tag. Okay, so carrying it on, in this example, as we can see, the bookstore and the book elements have the element contains because they contain other elements, and book is an attribute. Yeah, it has an attribute named as category is equal to children. So children is actually the attribute that actually defines the book element, and title, and the book title is actually something as a text section because it contains the text contents that has to be actually displayed over the web. Okay, so as per as XML naming rules, I should say you that all the XML names that are declared should follow certain rules. For example, all the XML names should always start with a letter. It should never start, it should never start with a number or a punctuation character. For example, this is a wrong define is a wrong way for defining an element because it is starting with a digit. So this is another thing which you should remember as per as XML naming rules. The names can contain only letters, numbers, and other characters as per the requirement, and all the XML names should start with letters. They cannot start with a letter XML. As per any other letter is okay, but any XML name should never start with a word named as XML. That is actually illegal according to XML naming rules. And last but not the least, all the XML names cannot contain spaces because they should be always treated as a single word rather than containing any space in between them. Okay, so any name can be used. No words are reversed actually in according to the best naming practices as per XML naming rules. Okay, so let me take you to the next section of the XML elements. XML elements can be actually extended to carry more information. For example, in this very particular XML document, I can actually, if I'm supposed to create an application that actually contains all the databases information about all the books that are actually present in a bookstore, and I have to actually insert some extra information to expand the information in this XML document. Suppose I want to insert an element named as author. Okay, so the author element starts. I actually named it as Satyajit is the author. That is the text section. I close this particular tag and it is closed as author tag. Okay, now suppose if I'm an application is built to an XML document, and at certain point of stage, if I'm deploying it with more number of lines or more number of XML codes, to expand the XML document, my question is, will the application break or crash? The answer is no. The application should still be able to find all the elements that are present in the XML document. For example, to, from, body elements, and everything. And as in this example, we have the book element, the author element, book title element, everything. So as long as XML has a beauty feature that how many ever XML codes or how many XML lines we want to expand in an XML document to provide additional information about an element, it is actually allowed in an XML world. So that is a positive advantage. Okay, so what is an attribute right now? As we have spoken a little bit about elements, let me tell you something about attributes. Now attributes are something like it provides additional information about an element to give some additional details about the element. Okay, so in HTML, as you know that the attributes provide additional information about the elements. Suppose like in an image tag, what we use in HTML, we make use of an attribute named as source, src, which actually tells us the source file or the image file that is present in a host system, and to to put the particular image in the web page. So as similar to that, we have many attributes that can be declared user defined in an XML document. So attributes values must always be quoted. You should remember the first thing. It might be either a single quote or a double quote, but it should always be quoted. For example, here in this line, I have something called as a book element that actually contains an attribute named as children. Now as you can see, the children is actually quoted in double quotes. Even if I do quote it in single quotes, that will even do it, but it should be quoted as per as XML naming rules for declaring an attribute. Okay, so it specifically it says us that whenever the attribute value itself contains a double quote, you can use single quote itself. There can be a mixture of single quote and double quote too. That is even allowed. For example, if I write it as children books and I want to cover it within within a double quotes, that is perfectly legal and it is acceptable as per XML naming rules. So mixture of single quotes and double quotes are even allowed for declaring an attribute. Okay, So let me tell you something about a comparison between an element and an attribute. For example, we have a book element here, as you can see, as a child element of the bookstore root element. Now suppose I have I again resume the book element, okay, and I have two text sections. Suppose like I have something like price, okay, and I name it something like 400 for, and I close the tag of price, okay, and I something have again I again have something related to a tag of a book. So as you can see, an attribute should be always quoted and given some importance to a certain element. Now suppose I have I just I something like I just try to just give the category or declare an attribute named as children books. Now suppose as a text section I even give here again category and I write it here as children books, which is totally okay, and I close the tag. Okay, now what happens here is we sometimes get a confusion through an element as an attribute. The problem here is category here is actually an element that is used as in the book element, and here category is actually an element that is actually defined here. So here category is used as an element and here category is used as an attribute. So the difference, what I want to say you is it is very tricky sometimes to actually get confused with an element and an attribute with the same name. So you must make it sure that attribute sometimes should be avoided normally in an XML document, just to avoid a confusion between an element and an attribute. Okay, so last but not the least, I just wanted to say you some two important points that you should always remember about an attribute, and might be you should consider them as disadvantages about an attribute. So attributes cannot contain multiple values. That's the first thing you should remember. It can only contain single values as per the naming rules of XML. It can never contain multiple values that can be used as in an XML document. A very important thing to remember. The second thing to remember is the XML cannot contain, the attributes cannot contain the tree structures, whereas elements can contain tree structures, but whereas the attribute cannot. So you should be very careful about it when an attribute can be only considered as as a single value or a single as a single value element, and an attribute cannot contain a tree structure. So whereas the element can. So that's where you can see as a disadvantage of attribute over an element. Okay, so this was all my whole tutorial is, and I hope you liked it, and get to see you soon and a feedback from you guys. Thank you very much.